Hello, everyone. Let me hide my screen. So yeah, I'm back with Ibn al-Warraq, and we're going to be discussing a few more things about the Sharia. We're going to look at the Islamic consensus, the Ijma, and then once we've covered the general gist of the last two articles that I want to discuss today, then we're going to dive into some deeper aspects where Muslim scholars disagree, where there are other nuanced interpretations, and where there's information which I'm well aware of that is not available in English, because there's a huge amount of information in Arabic that has not been translated, as well as in Urdu, which I'm aware of, which has not been translated. And we're going to be hopefully discussing some of that to learn things that generally is completely unknown in the West and even to Muslims. So welcome, Ibn al-Warraq.
Thank you, and thank you for having me back.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. I mean, you have a degree of knowledge that is unique, and I mean, you're in great. I mean, there are guys like Adam Seeker. I work with Osama Daktok, yourself. I mean, people who just within their given field are just absolute powerhouses of knowledge. And I mean, you have a unique degree of experience and knowledge that is. I mean, hopefully, I can get you on with some of these other guys in the near future.
Yeah, I hope so. I know most of them, and but not in person, or I worked indirectly with some of them, but we never did anything together.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know some of them, and yeah, sadly though, being on YouTube, you learn that some people, they're rivalries, and some people don't like, for instance, the fact that my knowledge of the Sharia, for instance, will not, I would say, contradict, but it adds to, or it makes their knowledge of, let's say, the Hadith, so the Quran, look a little inferior, and so therefore they don't want to play with you. They take their ball and go home. That's just the nature of YouTube. But at least I do have a circle of people that are very skilled and knowledgeable within their field, and we're able to have a dialogue and share information. Because look, we're all on the same team, working for the same end. We all have the same enemy, and I think we'd rather be collaborating than fighting each other.
Quick funny story, true one. There is an Egyptian journalist called Ibrahim Isa. He used to do, brilliant guy. He used to do a religious TV show. So he invited a sheikh, and they were talking about bank interest in Islam. And
Yeah.
the sheikh says, I think I told you the story before. Sheikh, he said, do you want it to be halal or haram? Do you want it to be allowed or forbidden? And Ibrahim Isa said, I thought the guy was just, in it for the money and he can tell me anything. He said, no, because in the text, you will find the text tell you it's halal, and you'll find the text tell you it's haram. So you can go whichever way you like. The contradiction between what you say and what someone else is saying, they are both supported by the text, as it's incoherent to start with. One statement was said by Ali ibn Abi Talib. They say, take from the Quran whatever you want for whatever you want. خذ من القرآن ما شئت لما شئت. So you can take from it whatever you want it to do, and you can reach whatever conclusion, which is, logically speaking, if you allowed in any system, if you allow one single contradiction, the conclusion could be anything you like.
Correct.
Because
That is
there is a
of love.
contradiction here, so you can go whichever way. Whether we respect everybody or we're going to kill everybody. I can support both conclusions.
And that is, yeah,
Scary,
unfortunately,
yes.
also when you get to that, you can look at consistency in terms of behavior, because actions,
Yeah, consistency is a foreign word in Islamic theology.
agreed, but actions speak louder than words and they tell fewer lies. And we can see, I think, let's judge by the behavior and by the fruits rather than by the words.
Yes. Anyway, back to you.
Yeah. So welcome, Cargo Crew. We've got FM. We've got David, James Flood, Nineveh, Gog and Magog, who've left comments, and to all the rest, welcome. Good to see you all again. And so guys, in many ways, my guest Ibn al-Warraq knows a great deal more than I do. I mean, he speaks Arabic; it's his first language. He is highly, highly knowledgeable, and he knows things well beyond. So what we're going to try and do is just focus on the article, and then afterwards, once we finish the article, we'll go into further depth, because he'll be able to add knowledge that I don't have, or add perspective, so that you can understand where different. Because would you say that Muslims also, with in between themselves, they squabble, they are disagreements. Ultimately, they're kind of a single force, a unified force, but they also have their own disagreements. And
They don't just squabble; they kill each other.
okay, that's a great way.
In the 80s, I know for a fact, in the 80s, the Islamic Jama'ah Islamiyah and Jihad in Egypt actually opened fire several times on the Muslim Brotherhood because they disagreed theologically, even though both of them are Sunni Salafi jihadis. But at the time, they completely disagreed.
But it's the religion of peace. What do you mean? This can't be.
Yeah, it is a religion of peace. Peace of you over here and peace of you over there.
Yeah. This is Muhammad Afridi, this guy again. Only religion with evidence. Islam can be easily proved. Yeah, if you for very low levels or very low levels of the meaning of the word evidence. I mean,
no, that's fine. If he can prove it, then sure, let him try.
Yeah. Okay. So tell you what, let's jump into the two articles I want to cover today. So without getting, these are generally, I'm not trying to quote every single source. I'm just trying to use a little bit of the Sharia, use the evidence that the Sharia sources that I am using use as basis for their premises, and then come to the logical conclusion. And then afterwards we can add some detail. So this one is Allah and Yahweh have fundamentally opposed natures. The reason I wrote this, the reason I spent the time looking at this is simply because Muslims claim we worship the same God. And I think even a cursory glance at Islamic beliefs, you realize that no, this is not true, because the morals are contradictory. The behavior of Muhammad is utterly the opposite of that of Jesus and the apostles. And their practices are just inconsistent with the theology of the Ten Commandments and Jesus's disciples and the church. And then the second one is that this is Islam versus Christianity. And I called it here the rebirth of Cain, because Islam teaches hatred of non-Muslims. And it's a truth that not everybody wants to face. But this is literally a case of Cain killing Abel. So something we must discuss. So let's start with this one. And so Allah and Yahweh have fundamentally opposed natures, right? So the God of the Bible is Yahweh. Oddly enough, the Quran has never heard, Allah has never heard of Yahweh. Yahweh's name occurs, I think, 6,300 times approximately in the Old Testament alone. So you have a name that is used over 6,000 times, attested to thousands of years before Christ was born, and Allah has never heard of this. Now, Ibn al-Warraq, I'll say something, and you might want to correct me or add to this. Now, Arab Christians will use the word Allah, and they use the word to mean the God of the Bible. However, I believe they use it in the sense of the God as a definite article, not as the proper name of the God of the Bible, who is Yahweh regardless. Muslims, the name Allah is not just the God as a generic descriptor, it is the proper name. So these are two different proper names.
Arab Christians would use three different words. They would use Yahweh as a proper noun, and they would use Arab, which is the equivalent of Adonai, the Lord, and they would use Allah as a generic term. The main difference in the use of the term is actually the reversing of the use of the term. In the Bible, Elohim is not used to reference to God alone. Moses was called Elohim, the judges was called Elohim, and false God was called Elohim. Elohim was used to literal translation be a mighty one. Or in American terminology would be the one where the buck stops. So the name itself doesn't necessarily refers to the true God. It refers to false God as well in the Bible. But Yahweh is a proper name. It's only refer to the true God, the creator of the universe, the judge of the universe. It never, ever, ever referred to anyone other than God. It was never applied to any other human being except Christ. But so in Islam, the word Rab, the equivalent, is used actually as a generic term to the Lord of the manor or the Lord of the house or the Lord of the donkey. So they use the proper noun into generic one, and they use the word Allah as a proper noun, which is one of the huge problem with understanding between Muslim and non and Christian specifically, because when, for example, when Christian says the Father is God, the Father is Allah in Arabic, the Son is Allah, and the Holy Spirit is Allah. What Muslims are hearing is the Father is the Son is the Holy Spirit, because they use Allah as a generic, as a proper noun.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But if you use it as in some other sense in Arabic, it's called ism jins, a kind of a noun like a doctor, an engineer. So you can have multiple persons referred to with the same noun. It's the confusion in how the word is used in Christianity and in Judaism, and how
Right.
it's used in Islam.
Yeah.
Because
So really, wouldn't you say that means there is a contradiction? The whole concept are contradictory.
yes, we're starting by the identification is the word is not the word Elohim in the Bible is not a proper name for God.
Yeah. So Allah is for Arab Christians, it's a descriptor, the God, whereas for Muslims, it's Allah, it's His name, like calling Him
It's
John.
His name, yes.
So, which is again, so also Allah and Yahweh are moral opposites. So let's have a look at this. This does take a bit of thought. We're going to have to work through this a little bit. So you have the God of the Bible called Yahweh and the God of the Quran called Allah. They are often assumed or asserted to be the same deity because of their shared supposed monotheistic framework and supposed Abrahamic origins. This is a mistake. If you carefully examine their natures as described in both scripture and theology, there are profound differences.
Yeah,
Now,
I'm not sure of the Abrahamic origin of Islam anyway.
yeah, we'll discuss that later. I've talked about
Yeah,
that many, many times. Oh, I had to reinstall my computer today. I was having some serious problems. So I had to reinstall. I haven't installed all my applications yet. And so, yeah, it'll take me a little while. So sometimes I want to have certain things available. So now, Yahweh's nature is defined by goodness and truth. Now, this is an inherent part of his nature. The God of the Bible cannot be untruthful. He can only be good. He can only be truthful. He can only be just. He's not capable of evil, injustice, or anything that's untruth. Inherently, okay, he is incapable of evil or deception, but Allah's nature prioritizes absolute sovereignty, which means that Allah can deceive. Allah can take actions that conflict with moral goodness, because to say that Allah cannot do something is blasphemy against Allah. Allah can do anything. Now, the implications we'll discuss as we go, but this makes Allah distinct from Yahweh. And in a theological sense, it means Allah is capable of greater evil than Satan, which is a contrast that we must recognize and deal with. Any
there is
comment?
a there is a very subtle terminology here. There is one question they used to ask in the Middle Ages and in Christian circles: can God send Mary to hell? And the answer of the question is no, because he promised, and according to the book of Hebrews and other places in the Bible, it's impossible for God to lie.
Yes.
He is bound by his character. And so once he give a promise, like one of the main things, for example, I was talking with someone about it the other day, the promise given to Israel with the land was unconditional, because it's impossible for God to lie. That
Mhm.
promise, this land is for Israel, for the Jews, forever. So it doesn't matter what they do, it doesn't matter what, because it's unconditional and he doesn't lie. End of the story.
Right.
But in Islam, if the question is asked, the answer would be Allah can do everything, but some things are not befitted to him. The implication is he doesn't have a moral character, but the thing is, we think it might not look good to him, we deny it.
Yeah.
But he's capable of, as capability, he's capable of lying, he's capable of denying himself, he's capable of anything, because their terminology or their understanding of sovereignty is nothing can bound Allah to anything, including his character. I
Right.
cannot say his attribute, because in Islam you cannot give attributes to Allah.
Exactly. These are so yeah, they really tie themselves in knots. I just want to say thank you. Yes, Yahweh endorsed human sacrifice. He still does. That's jihad, right? Saying Allahu Akbar and then killing people in the name of Allah. Right? So
Uh,
Yahweh, what sorry, that's what I know. Sorry. Yahweh endorsed human sacrifice, but Allah
yeah,
rebuked.
I was
I'm
wondering
sorry, so I got that
where you got
backwards.
that
So
from.
Allah,
Sorry.
you kill people in the name, for instance, you can sacrifice your child. You can send your 5-year-old child out with a bomb and have him blow it up in front of people that you don't like, soldiers or anyone in a concert, you name it. And that is fine because Allah permits that. That is just jihad. You earn reward. In fact, he earns reward. He can intercede for multiples. Some say 72, some say it means many of his family members. They will get paradise. And the jihadi who dies or kills in the name of Allah is guaranteed paradise. So, unfortunately, no, Yahweh does not do human sacrifice. Jesus performed no human sacrifice. Muhammad killed and murdered in the name of Allah, and his followers do today. So yeah, hold on. I just want to say, and we've got Tomic Alto says, thank you for the work you do, Lloyd. I first found about it through a holy humanist. You've taught me a lot. One day I hope to build on the knowledge I've gained from you, from your hard work. God bless you. Thank you. Yeah, please use this information. Take what you need from it. And good luck with getting it out there. Speak on social media. Just speak the truth. That's all we have to do. Your thoughts, Ibn al-Warraq?
Nothing. I was just wondering where he got the idea of Yahweh endorsed
I think
human
he
sacrifice
misspoke.
from.
I don't know. Maybe he misspoke, or maybe he's just a troll. I mean, it's
No,
quite.
because yeah, I just found it weird. Anyway,
I think he misspoke. I think he just misspoke, honestly. So, yeah. So, Yahweh has a nature of goodness and truth. Now, the Bible presents Yahweh as a God whose nature is intrinsically tied to goodness, truth, and moral perfection. Take Numbers 23:19. God is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should repent. This establishes that lying is contradictory to Yahweh's nature. It's not a choice he makes. He is incapable of it. His nature is truth. So look at Titus 1, verse 2. In hope of eternal life, which God, who cannot lie, promised before the ages began. So the inability to lie isn't a limitation, but a reflection of Yahweh's essence, of his inherent goodness, truth itself. He is truth. When you speak the truth, you are manifesting the nature of God that is part of your creation. Your thought, Ibn al-Warraq?
uh, that's precisely the point. I was looking. I don't know if you ever read Nahj al-Balagha, which is allegedly it's attributed to Ali ibn Abi Talib, and it's in the first sermon. He says that the highest level of faith is believing in the God's oneness, and the highest level of believing in God's oneness is to not to attribute any characteristics to Him. So truthful, justice, all of that, it's something he might have or he might not, but it's not his character.
Right.
Because in Islam there is the problem with the says the problem with ta'addud al-qudama. There is the multiple eternals, because we agree logically that is an attribute. It's not the same as you. Your attribute is not you.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so if Allah existed on his own and those attributes were also existed eternally or not,
Yeah,
or
that's a conundrum. That's a serious flaw in Islamic philosophy and theology.
it's a serious flaw in absolute oneness, because you would have to have a creator either in need of the creation in order to get his attribute
Yeah,
activated
and that
or
creates
changing.
a completely different moral theology, which we'll discuss briefly. Yeah, but
Which led Muhammad to actually say in hadith, think about Allah's creation and don't think about Allah, lest you'll be led astray. So thinking about Allah and who he is will lead Muslim astray, according to Muhammad,
yeah. So
because it will create these questions which are not answerable.
yeah, I mean, actually, it's really not that. If you apply a bit of basic non-contradictory logic, you can come to certain conclusions very easily. But okay, so Yahweh's goodness is fundamental. Psalm 34:8 declares, "O taste and see that the Lord is good." Then James 1:17 adds, "Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change." So his nature is unchangingly good. Okay, I have no idea what Dasso Rhino is talking about. I have no idea whether the guy is a Mormon, a Satanist, a Muslim, or a Christian. So I'm just going to put you on timeout for the next 24 hours. Thank you for your commentary, but I don't have time to deal with the confusion that you are,
I don't think he understands what human sacrifice means to start with.
Yeah. So come back tomorrow. Please try again. Get your mind and thoughts in order, and then come back.
Ask
Okay?
ask a coherent question. It can be answered. So
Yeah. So this unchanging goodness means that Yahweh cannot act in a way that contradicts moral perfection. So in Judeo-Christian theology, evil is a deviation from God's nature. But we've just briefly, and we will still establish that Allah can do evil, in fact, greater evil than Satan. So Isaiah 5:20 warns us, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil." So Yahweh's standard of goodness is absolute, not arbitrary. So theologically, this is supported by the concept of divine simplicity, articulated by thinkers like Thomas Aquinas in Summa Theologica. And for Aquinas, God's attributes, his goodness, his truth, his justice, are not separate qualities, but identical to his essence. God cannot do evil because evil is the absence of good, and God is only good. And God, whose pure actuality, cannot lack what he is. He cannot lack good because he is good. He's the source of all good. So this isn't a limit in Yahweh's power, but a consequence of his perfection. So hopefully that describes God simply enough for everyone to understand and comprehend. And good to see you back, Lilomain. Your thoughts?
Application for this in two things. Within the Bible, you wouldn't find something that will deemed forbidden and then were allowed later. None. It doesn't happen. Like murder is okay at some point and later on is not. Like alcohol is fine and it's not. So you wouldn't have two things that's called it's forbidden or it's not. Dietary law is a different thing because dietary law were specific to temple worship, and as Christian we understand it differently. But in Islam you will find most of fiqh, you will find things that was allowed at one point, like temporary marriage in Sunni, but later is not. And then it actually was allowed and disallowed for about 7 different times. It depends on circumstances. It was not allowed for Muslims, for example, to have what they call jihad al-talab, is aggressive war. It was not allowed to them in the beginning, but it was allowed, and then it was. It was allowed to them to drink, except in prayer, but then not to drink and not to drink at all. So, which means none of those has actually objective moral standard. Like something is wrong regardless. It's wrong. It depends on the situation you're in. That literally the definition of the subjective moral standard.
Ethics of convenience, or shall we say?
Yes, it's not actually situational ethics, because situational ethics would still objective on the situation, but even muta is
convenient morals.
It's convenient, yes, convenient moral standard, or what works today. So the application within Sira is actually have lots of places where things were allowed, disallowed, allowed, disallowed several times.
In other words, there's no absolute morality in Allah.
Which means the moral standard is not reflection of Allah's character.
Yeah, it's what's convenient now, what works now.
Or at best is Allah's arbitrary will.
Actually, it's defined. Well, that is true. In fact, it is Allah's arbitrary will. And B, it's defined in the Sharia as one of the 6 pillars of the Sharia, that the ends justify the means. So in Islam, Allah's defining trait is absolute sovereignty. So Allah's sovereignty is above morality. So Allah is unbound by any moral constraints. And the Quran emphasizes Allah's omnipotence and his freedom to act as he wills. Quran 3:54 describes Allah as the best of deceivers. And I'm not going to get into a long song and dance about, no, it actually means the best of planners, the best of architects. Allah has an architectural degree. He went to Oxford. I don't care. So, Khair al-Maktarin in the context of outwitting Jesus's enemies. Quran 8:30 echoes this. Now, in fact, you can find translations
Yeah,
that
linguistically, by the way, you can't make this distinction because the verse وَيَمْكُرُونَ وَيَمْكُرُ اللَّهُ, they deceive and Allah deceives. So whatever you're going to attribute to them, that's exactly what Allah is doing. That's linguistically, because there is nothing in the text to say the word changed meaning between Allah and between them. So whatever their action is textually, that's the action of Allah. If what Allah is doing,
you say deceived, there are translations that literally use the word deceived.
If Muslim want to say that what Allah is doing is fine and it's not morally reprehensible, then what they are doing is not morally reprehensible either. What's sauce for the goose is sauce for the ganders. So it's either both of them are reprehensible or none of them. You can't say this one is wrong, yamkuruna, and this one is okay, yamkur, because talk about different people. No, the word is used in contrast to each other at the same action.
Okay.
Would have the same moral standard.
Yeah, and the people who were plotting to kill Jesus were deceiving, and therefore Allah deceived them instead. He was better at them at deception than they were.
Yeah, he wasn't that better according to some Muslim scholar because he messed this one up.
Yeah, well, but I mean, yeah. So
different day.
So now the Arabic term makkar, deceiver, or as they say, planner or architect or whatever the heck it is today, implies cunning with a negative connotation in human contexts. But for Allah, it's framed as a sign of his power. And of course, we know the best of deceivers is Satan. Satan's the father of lies, last I checked. So Islamic scholars like At-Tabari explain this as Allah's ability to outmaneuver disbelievers. But the implication we're left with is very clear. Allah can deceive, as can Satan.
And if I go with his explanation, as I said before, then what they are doing is their attempt to outmaneuver. Either both the terminology yamkuruna wa yamkur, the two words have no separation between them. They either mean morally the same thing, or you're being arbitrary.
Right.
So whatever their makr is, it's his makr. Or you're just being, oh no, I want to have a special bleeding here because yamkuruna, when it refers to Allah, it means something completely different, which it will result in the destruction of the language as communication, and would result in the whole claim that the Quran is plain and clear to be false. So you can't have it both ways.
No, these are very good points, and these are fantastic points you raise. Yeah, I mean it's catch-22, and either way they have problems. It's called a destructive dilemma in logic. No matter which way you go, you still have a problem. You're wrong whichever path you take, whichever choice you make. So, Quran 14:4 further states, Allah sends astray whom He wills, and He guides whom He wills. So this tells us that Allah actively misleads people. He doesn't allow them free choice to make an error, but in this case, he causes their misguidance. So the hadith support this. Sahih Muslim 2657b quotes Muhammad as saying, Allah has created some people for hell. This indicates that Allah has predestined some to eternal torment. He created them specifically for the purposes of throwing them in the hellfire, irrespective of their actions. So in Islamic theology, this is not injustice because Allah's will defines justice. Whatever Allah does is just. If Allah decides to come down and steal the money from your wallet, well, Allah can't do wrong. You can't accuse Allah of error. So therefore, what happened is good. And therefore, they can steal your money too because, they can get away with it because that's good too, because that just leads to crazy morality and crazy theology. Right? Ibn al-Warraq?
I don't know. Have you read the long version of Sahih Muslim, the Hadith?
Probably not.
Okay, there is one very long hadith, but there is a part of it. It says, after all the intercession of Muhammad and prophets and everybody else and angels, Allah will come to heaven, and in Arabic it says, فيخرج منها أناسا قد امتحشوا لم يفعلوا خيرا قط. He will bring out of hell people who were being charred or like a charcoal. They have never done anything good in their life, and he will put them in heaven.
That's crazy, because
but he would replace them. Yeah, he would replace them with Christian and Jews, apparently.
But
because there is,
in Christian theology, you cannot go into heaven if you haven't asked for forgiveness, received forgiveness, you are cleansed, you are purified, then you can go to heaven. You don't just march into heaven with all your sins.
Yeah, according to Quran, every single Muslim will go to hell for some time. And then
it would be like purgatory.
out or not.
Concept of purgatory.
Where do you? Sorry, personal opinion. Where do you think the purgatory came from?
I mean, that's a Catholic idea that extends way back, that goes long before.
It wasn't canonized until about the 8th or 9th century.
Yeah,
as
the
far
word
as
Trinity wasn't canonized until the 4th century. I mean, there's lots of things.
But the idea of purgatory, there is a whole surah in the Quran called Surah Al-Araf. That's a purgatory. But anyway, the idea that Allah would have Jews and Christian as Muslim would say is, Ya Muslim, Ya Abdullah, hada Yahudi, ifkakak min an-nar. This is your ransom from hell. A Muslim would never done anything good in his life, so Allah would hand him over a Christian or a Jew to be his ransom from hell.
Yeah. So if we were worshiping the same God, right, then we shouldn't be having this debate, about Allah's this and but Yahweh is that. You should all be on the same page, singing the same song off the same song sheet. But it's very clear already, these are completely different characters, completely different moral theologies.
Yes, because you have, even if you take it on Islamic on theology, whoever does good and whoever does bad. But according to Islam's own theology, there are some people who will be redeemed, saved, and they have never done good in their life.
That's crazy. That is.
I will look up this hadith and I'll share it with you.
Yeah. No, that goes against Christian theology. But let me continue with the article. So, as Al-Ghazali writes in his The Incoherence of the Philosophers, to impose moral limits on Allah is to undermine Allah's sovereignty, which is blasphemy. So to say that Allah cannot tell lies or do the most outrageous, most egregious evil is to limit Allah, and this is blasphemy. To say that Allah cannot do greater evil than Satan is to limit Allah, and this is blasphemy, which is crazy. Then what's the point of Satan? Right? So this unrestricted power means Allah can do anything, including what humans would call evil. Quran 6:39 says, those whom Allah wills to guide, He opens their breast to Islam. So the only righteous, holy, correctly acting people on earth are those who are Muslims. And those who Allah wills to leave straying, He makes their breast closed and constricted. So therefore, you are evil. And those who become Muslims automatically gain the secret knowledge. They get the gnosis, and they are now good somehow because they spun around 3 times, they whispered or shouted, or they said, La ilaha la 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 la, and boom, they're a Muslim and they're good now. Am I reading that correctly, Ibn al-Warraq?
You are reading that correctly. And Al-Ghazali, Tahafut al-Falasifa, I can't remember the English name. Anyway, he was trying to pick a fight with Ibn Rushd because Ibn Rushd tried to reconcile Islamic theology with logic.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, the only way Ibn Rushd found it could happen, he brought up something called the double truth, which means something could be theologically true even if it's logically false. It's a nightmare for philosophers.
Actually, let me bring this up. I just want to show everyone something. I said I just installed everything today, so I need to still do a lot of setup, but let me go here. So I just want to show everyone within the Sharia, this is reliance of the traveler. This is section A7.2. And notice unlawful knowledge, just so you know, and there's the Arabic here on the right-hand side. Unlawful knowledge includes sorcery and magic and philosophy, because learning philosophy is bad for you, you nasty, nasty Muslim. It's as bad as learning witchcraft and magic and sorcery and philosophy, you evil Muslims. Isn't it odd that they deny Muslims from learning philosophy?
Not really, because if it's going to destroy the whole thing. Okay, I found this, and that will be a surprise to you. It goes to the same point you were making. I need to share a window, this window, and share.
Okay, I'm just going to share it. There we go.
Here it is. Look at this part where in here.
Yeah, can you zoom in a bit on your screen, please? Can you just zoom into the relevant text? Because I'm just seeing like a couple of microscopic ants scrolling on the page there, basically.
This text.
Yeah, the relevant text. Can you just zoom into it? Just use your.
I tried to zoom, but I think I have
Control
to
plus on your
share
keyboard,
again.
hold Control, and then use the up mouse scroll wheel. Scroll upwards on your mouse. So you click on the text, and you either press Control plus.
No, I'll unshare it. I zoomed it in, but I'll unshare it and share it again.
Okay.
Share a window. There it is. Share this.
There you go.
Yeah, you see this one?
Much
Go
better.
back and bring forth those in whose heart you find as much as an atom of good. And they do that. And then later on, you say, go back and find those who you find no good in them whatsoever.
Wow. I've read this. Yes, I've read this a long time ago, but then I didn't always understand all the details or the significance of
but and this is Bukhari and Muslim. So it's one of the most authentic for them, Bukhari and Muslim.
Okay.
So it's basically the idea of everybody intercede, and then Allah would send some angel to heaven to bring people who has never done anything right in anything good in their life, and then go to heaven. Then
so bad people go, good people go to hell, and the bad guys go everywhere, basically.
Yeah, basically.
That's crazy. It's like psychopath heaven.
Again, basically.
That's nuts. So look, I mean, this is Islamic theology, but guys, as you can tell, we clearly worship the same God. It's the same logic, same morality, same theology, same character, same behaviors.
And here's that text, and it has two things in it. And he will then take a handful of from hell, bring forth from it people who never did any good. Do you know something else beside that?
Tell us.
Whose handful?
A handful from hell. A handful.
Whose hand?
Remember, the majority of the denizens of hell, according to Islam, are women. The major amount.
No, actually, no. The handful is Allah's hand.
Oh yes, of course. I was about to get. Yeah, it took me a while. Allah's hand. Allah doesn't have a hand.
That's one of the contradictions they have. It's there is no incarnation, but Allah has a hand and the house and everything. So He takes a handful, and there's the other one which goes with it, with the same hadith. It says when Allah created human, He took. He took some with his hand, so those are in heaven, and he took some with the other hand. Both our hands are right, and those are in hell, and I don't care. So he decided beforehand, before you do anything, who's going to heaven, going to go to hell, and whatever you're going to do in between is absolutely irrelevant.
Yep, that's so. Yeah, this makes perfect sense. Of course, entirely logical, and AWLG says whatever causes doubt is haram, and that is true. No thinking, no questioning, no philosophy. Yeah, the wrong think is dangerous and can make you become an apostate, and that can lead to you losing your head, literally. And welcome, Hein. Good to see you, Ryan. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't have an answer for you here. So, but it's not really entirely relevant now, unless you have a short answer for me, Ibn, to this question.
Uh,
I'm not sure how relevant it is right now, but I mean, it's not. Otherwise, we can skip it and come back to it another time. So,
I'm trying. I was trying to read it.
oh, sorry. Let me just bring it up again. Okay, there it is.
Um, it was a debate between Jabriya and Qadariya and Mu'attila and others. The problem is the predestination in Islam is understood as absolute fatalism. It has absolutely nothing with your idea of predestination, to the extent that actually remove responsibility from the person. Lloyd, you know the story of the guy who killed 99 people and then want to go to a monk to ask him to help him for forgiveness, and he died in the way. The monk said no, and then he killed the monk, made him 100, and tried to go somewhere else, and he died. And the angel came and moved him closer to the good land so he can go to heaven even though he doesn't do anything, because it was predestined for him to go to heaven. The predestination hadith says Allah, I was mentioning it before, Allah took some people, spirit, souls, and said those are in heaven and those are in hell, and I don't care. رفعت الأقلام وجفت الصحف, and the pages are dried now. And one of Muhammad's companions said, why do we have to work then? Why do we have to do anything good? And Muhammad's reply was typical, said, oh, everybody would do what they were predestined to do. There is a concept in Islam is completely alien to non-Muslim, that's your action are not yours, they are created.
Yeah, because Allah is a puppet master. He is totally sovereign over everything. I mean, if you look at the philosophy of, say, someone like Rumi, everyone goes on about his poetry. I mean, according to Rumi, for instance, every raindrop falls when and where it's meant to. Allah controls literally every raindrop. So the Allah
And
is all free.
as human, we actually not participating in the creation of new human babies. That's
Yeah,
a
we're
new
broken.
creation. That's a new creation by Allah. Every action you're doing, whatever it is created. So I
Yep.
think that's one huge difference, because God in the Bible, even though I do believe in predestination, but the predestination is He's giving you the choice. I give you life and death. Choose life so you may live. The predestination doesn't mean
Yeah, let's
availing you from responsibility. Is telling you what the rules are and how you act within
yeah.
those
Yeah.
rules.
No,
You
I
are
think
free
it's
to
answered
make an
already.
act.
Let's not go further. I think that's answered. I don't want to sort of take over the
Yeah,
whole session with this.
it's a completely. I don't like to use the term predestination talking about Islam. I
Yeah.
use fatalism.
No, that's enough
It's
because I'm going to be
fatalist.
talking. I will be talking about. I'm actually going to be doing a talk in the near future, I guess, on John Calvin and John Calvin's philosophy and theology, which is uh, anyone who's watched me and listened to me on this channel know that I consider Martin Luther and John Calvin to be complete theological frauds. And I will be discussing John Calvin's theology and how it aligns with Islam far too closely. But that's a story for the future. So now, Allah actively hardens hearts. He leads people to disbelief and to punishment because that is His pleasure. Unlike Yahweh, whose goodness prevents such actions, Allah's sovereignty permits this. So His will is not bound by a consistent moral nature. So therefore, you have moral opposites. Now, there are theological.
Sorry, I have to bring something here so somebody wouldn't bring it. There is a verse in the Bible when it talk about Pharaoh and God hardened his heart. The
Yeah,
complete different concept here. Pharaoh's hardening of heart because
God gave
an,
him
an,
over to
an
his
arrogant an arrogant person and consider himself to be the creator of everything. God is telling him you have to recognize there is a creator of the universe. So
Mhm.
that's, oh, no, this is it's arrogance. In Islam, God hardened people's heart is, as I said before, your action is created. You will be pushed to do things. It's like it doesn't matter. There is a saying in Arabic we used a lot in Egypt. أنا أريد وأنت تريد والله يفعل ما يريد. I want something and you want something and Allah does whatever He wants.
Right.
So your wants and your desire and your action is actually irrelevant.
Now, also with Pharaoh, it says that God gave Pharaoh over to his own instincts and
Yes,
desires and will.
that's the difference I wanted to make.
Yeah. So now there are theological and there are philosophical implications, right? Yahweh, he's unable to lie and he cannot do evil because that stems from his nature as goodness. Goodness and truth flow from God. God is goodness, right? Allah's ability to deceive and mislead stems from Allah's nature as sovereign will. I do what I want, as we've just been explained to by Ibn al-Warraq so well, unbound by any kind of moral necessity or moral constraint. Allah does not have that moral constraint. So philosophically, Allah is in a very awkward position for us. If Allah can do anything, including deceive, mislead, or create people for hell, then his capacity for what humans perceive as evil surpasses that of Satan, because Satan is not the creator of the universe. Satan cannot create people, but Allah can, and Allah can enact evil on those people. So therefore, he is more evil than Satan. And in Christian theology, Satan's evil is limited. He tempts, but he cannot create or predestine. Right? Revelation 12:9 calls Satan the deceiver of the whole world. And here Allah is the deceiver. Well, yeah, your thoughts on that, Ibn al-Warraq?
And something interesting in Christianity, Satan's war is not against God at all. It's against man, because he knows already the war against God it's lost. So the deceiver or the accuser of believers, he's going against you, and so you wouldn't benefit from the faith. He's not going against God because he knows.
He's trying to send you to hell.
Yeah, because he knows the other side of the battle is like, I'm not going to go there. In Islam, there is a verse in Surah Ibrahim, verse 22, I believe, when it says, and Satan will say when everything is over, Allah promised you truly. So in Islam, Satan apparently would confess Islam, but not others. And then you have the huge problem is there. Allah does not have attribute, and whatever attribute we have for Allah are not actually comprehensible.
Yeah,
because you have to understand it بلا تأويل ولا تشبيه ولا تعطيل ولا تمثيل, without similarity, without liking it to human attribute, without abolishing it, so your understanding as prescriptive, and you literally says he means but Aziz, he means Aziz. He means by love, he means love, whatever he means.
Yeah.
Because if you understand it, human concept, you really have a problem. Like one you brought up early, he's a deceiver. Said, oh no, it doesn't mean that. So language disintegrate, and you have a being that is, you have a being that's ultimately unknowable. Like trying to compare, Allah with anything, is Allah is that being that's unknown. Okay, if it's unknown, you cannot tell me anything about it.
Yeah. So let's not dwell too long on explaining a concept. Let's try and keep it simpler. Okay, because time.
I didn't notice the time. Sorry.
Yeah. Now notice Satan is rebelling against God's truth. Right. He is trying to deceive the world, deceive people, send them to hell. Allah, however, deceives as an act of divine will. So in Quran 3:54, this makes his deceptive power greater than Satan's. Right? Now this raises a logical dilemma, and YHWH says very well. It says hyper predeterminism means there is no good or evil, means there's no fairness, means there is no rightness, because you can be thrown into hell for nothing. So how is there reward? How is there punishment? How is this fair? How is good and evil mean nothing? They are arbitrary. They are meaningless, because you can be thrown into hell for being perfectly good because God said, off you go to hell. So that raises serious theological and moral dilemmas, problems. So now, if Allah's sovereignty includes the ability to do evil and Yahweh's goodness excludes it, these are contradictory opposites. Can they be the same God? And the answer is no. Now, Anselm of Canterbury, who died in 1109, defines God as that than which nothing greater can be conceived.
That being was nothing greater can be conceived. Yeah.
So he's inherently perfect in goodness, right? Yahweh fits this. His actions align with an unchanging moral nature. Allah, however, prioritizes his will, his personal desire over goodness, over morality. Ibn Hazm, who died in 1064, an Islamic theologian, and I've covered him in a series I call Polemics, which discusses the corruption of the Bible. And Ibn Hazm is a major figure in that, the whole Tahrif debate. And it's hilariously funny to how they call this man a genius. God alone knows, because I certainly can't figure it out. The man was a complete historical idiot. But that said, right, he argues that Allah's actions are just because he does them. Allah's actions are just because Allah does them. So because Allah does something, it's good, even if it's, according to our reckoning, evil. So
and he doesn't do them for he doesn't do them for a good reason, by the way. Let me show you something. This hadith, this is kind of a dilemma for Muslim. Read it all.
Chapter, 4c, faith, 4c, chapter, belief in the divine decree, section 3. Abu Nadra told how a companion of the Prophet called Abu Abdullah was visited by his friends who found him weeping. They asked him what made him weep and whether God's messenger had not told him to clip some of his mustache and keep it like that till he met him. He replied, yes, but I heard Allah's messenger say that Allah took a handful in his right hand and another in his left, saying, this is for this and that is for that.
This is for heaven and this is for hell.
Yeah.
This and that means heaven and hell. Okay.
Okay, great. I didn't know that. So this is for this is for heaven, and this is for hell, and I do not care. And I do not know in which of the two handfuls I am.
So it's you see the agony, because it doesn't matter what you do, in whichever hand you fall in, that's where you're going to end, even if you are one of Muhammad's companions.
So that's random. That's totally random.
Because there, according to Islam, your action are not really relevant, because the end of it. There is one story when Muhammad looked at somebody and said, "Oh, this guy is going to go to hell," and he said, "But he's an absolutely wonderful Muslim and he does everything correct." He said he's going to go to hell. So apparently this guy was wounded in battle and it was agonizing, so he stabbed himself to death. So whatever he did before is completely irrelevant, because he fell in the wrong hand. And there is no reason for it, because Allah is the one who says, and I don't care. That's not the I don't care. That's an uttering of Allah. This in heaven, this in hell, and I don't care. There is no reason for it.
Yeah, I mean, that is totally random. There is no way to know. I mean, that's completely random. And the only way out is to do jihad, is to kill or be killed in the name of Allah. That's the only guarantee you have. So therefore, Muslims are then compelled, out of this agony of doubt, to become psychopaths and murderers to get their way out.
Because they are dealing with a psychopath murdering Allah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it is I mean, for the audience, can you honestly, just given what we've revealed here, and this is a very basic article, can we determine from this that these are two completely separate, morally contradictory, theologically contradictory personalities, utterly separate, totally different figures with a different worldview, a different philosophy, a different history? There's nothing that overlaps between them. They are opposites. And the opposite of God would be Satan. I mean, really, God, there's no equal to God, is what we believe. But you have Satan who opposes him, the greatest of the opposers. So Allah is not God. He's not the God of the Bible by any means. So now Allah does things, right? Whatever Allah does is just, because Allah does them. Whatever Allah does, he can do whatever he likes, and it's just. So he does them not because they align with an external moral standard. He does them because he feels like it. So this is called voluntarism. Allah's will defines right and wrong, which means Allah can command evil. And if Allah does evil, it's good because Allah's doing it. Because Allah does whatever he likes, and whatever he likes is right. Look at Quran 9:5. You have violence against the polytheists. And if you're wondering if you're one, you probably are if you're not a Muslim. So, and this doesn't contradict Allah's nature, right? Which is unthinkable for Yahweh. So,
Look at the Quran 5:17, which is extremely telling. I'll read it. You don't have to look at it.
okay.
Say, then who could prevent Allah at all if he had intended to destroy Christ, the son of Mary, and his mother, or everyone on earth? So the idea is he's not bound because destroying Christ and his mother, the same chapter says you're preferred over all women on earth, but I'll destroy you anyway. So conceptually, he's not bound by any promise he makes, and he would destroy even the ones who says are saved and everybody else.
So this is someone who you just cannot believe a word he says. I mean, how is that?
Yes, and you compare this with the promise given to Abraham. The book of Hebrews says, because there is none greater than God, God swear by himself, because by two decrees, it's impossible for God to lie.
Quran, Allah swears by the stars.
Yeah, I know. This is, because you always swear, but who's greater than you, I think.
Yeah, so you
But
swear by the stars. You're like, okay, Allah, are you telling us that the star god, the moon god, the sun god are greater than you? Like, huh?
Because in the Bible, he says, swearing. No, he swear by himself. Because so he bound by there is a verse in the Bible, the one whose promise is faithful. Like you depend on whatever promise is given. You don't depend on what you're doing or who you are or how good you've been, on the faithfulness of the one who's given the promise. That's your guarantee.
Right.
When I'm translating from Arabic in my head, when God says, because I don't change, you are not consumed.
Right.
Because he doesn't change. Allah changes all the time. He already told you.
Anything Allah does is good by default, even if it's contradictory or different, or it doesn't matter what Allah does. With God, there's this concept.
Actually, you cannot say it's good. Anything Allah does is what Allah does. Because saying it's good, you're presupposing an objective standard of good. And
Muslim cannot condemn Allah. He cannot condemn Allah.
That's why they cannot say good or bad. They said what he does is what he does.
So that's a completely different moral standard. That is not Christian. That is not biblical. That is not the Bible, period.
It's 7th century moral standard of Arabia.
Yeah. So now let's continue with the article. Practical examples in Scripture. Consider specific actions. Genesis 18:25. Abraham appeals to Yahweh's justice. Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just? Yahweh spares Sodom even if just 10 righteous people are found, showing his justice is tied to goodness.
Notice what Abraham is appealing to is God's character. Because your character is just, you would do just.
Right. Good.
Not his arbitrariness, not, oh yeah, I know your character, but can you ignore it anyway? He's not doing that.
It's arbitrary. That's arbitrary versus a fixed static nature which doesn't change. So then contrast this with Quran 7:179. We have created for hell many of the jinn and mankind. They are like cattle, even more astray than cattle. So Allah creates beings specifically for damnation with no appeal to justice. Allah's will alone decides. There's nothing you can do to change that.
Yes, remember the two hands? Which hand they fall in? So the one in the wrong hand?
Yes. I'm going to put this guy in timeout for 24 hours as well.
I'm sorry, I'm not following the text. It's too small here.
No, sorry. You've got this guy. Church fathers say Jesus is a lesser God, not the true Father in heaven. Now, there's a word for that. Hold on a second. This is from Suhail Ahmed. Okay? Muhammad Suhail Ahmed. Now, first of all, I'm not sure which church father he's referring to, but the church fathers do say plenty of things. However, only what is ratified, agreed upon, and canonized by the church is valid, because the church fathers are not considered to be infallible. So
Yeah, I was going to ask him which, because I did read the ante-Nicene, the post-Nicene fathers, and
and
it
which
was
church father
it
would
took me
agree that Allah is
years.
not God? I mean,
Yeah,
think about that. Sorry, Jesus is not God, right?
that would be a heretic of the Marcions in the first century, and was called a heresy by the early church already.
And that would be exactly a heresy. There are no church fathers, but people use Saint Augustine a lot. Saint Augustine said it doesn't matter what Saint Augustine said. What matters is what the church as an authority ultimately agreed was correct in what Augustine
It's
said.
one of the reason I actually like Augustine, because he said it quite clearly. If he said something wrong and he can refute it by scripture, he would be refuted. He doesn't claim what he says is infallible or
Yes,
end of the discussion. It's
correct.
his understanding.
So
Like,
people can argue that St. Augustine said something. St. Augustine said the sky has zebra stripes. And granted, we can read it in Confessions, page 5, chapter 1, line 3. The sky has zebra stripes. Augustine wrote it and he said it. Granted, there it
but
is.
if you read it in the confession, he probably will telling you one of the many wrong things he thought
Yeah,
of as
but
a
in the
young
church,
man.
you
So
know,
that's
Augustine,
what the confession was about.
yeah, but then the church would look at that line and go, Augustine, that's stupid. You need your eyes tested. The sky does not have zebra stripes. We reject that. We like when you said it's blue in the morning because yes, it is blue. In fact, it's blue whole day. But the zebra stripes bit, you need to see an ophthalmologist and get some glasses. Augustine, we're rejecting that. So it
Or
doesn't matter.
because of Augustine previous life, for example, he before he was a Christian, he had several prostitutes living in with him. When he became a Christian, he considered sex for any reason other than procreation is a sin.
Yeah,
And a
so
lot of other church fathers said, sorry, Augustine, nope, you're wrong
exactly.
here.
So this is not to debunk or to dunk on Augustine. I'm just trying to make a point because yes, Augustine would have said things. In fact, many church fathers, if you look at the church history, the church turned around and said, "Sorry, we reject that. That's wrong." So the church makes the ultimate decision. They're the ultimate authority. And yes, these people have made a great contribution to theology and philosophy. However, they are not the final arbiter. That authority lies with the church. So moving on though, let's not
I'm
get.
not, yeah, moving on, but I'm not sure actually he can quote a church father who says that.
Yeah, no, and that's why I'm look. He's here to troll. I'm not here to engage in nonsense.
Okay,
So,
back
yeah.
to
I
the
mean,
article.
yeah. So another example, Matthew 5:44. Jesus says, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Now, corollary is nowhere does Allah preach or teach love for the non-Muslim. Nowhere. Now, this reflects Yahweh's nature of love. Quran 60 verse 4 commands enmity and hatred forever. Why? Because you're not a Muslim. So Muslims are to hate you. So Allah has made you specifically not to choose Islam. Allah has decided you will never be a Muslim, therefore you will never be good, therefore you will never go to paradise. And then He's told the Muslims that they have to hate you for what Allah did to you, which is insane. Unless you convert, unless Allah somehow opens your breast and you decide to accept Islam, then you convert and then they can love you instead of hating you. See, you've got Yahweh's love, which is universal. Yahweh wants you to repent and come to heaven. Whereas Allah's enmity, his hatred, is doctrinal. These are very different theologies, completely contradictory. Ibn al-Warraq, your thoughts?
None. You covered it well.
Thank you. Yeah. So why does this matter? Okay. The difference is not academic. This shapes morality and behavior, worldview, politics, social structure, how we treat men, women, children, everything. So Yahweh's nature as goodness provides a consistent moral standard. Lying, injustice, and evil are always wrong because they contradict God's essence. Allah's nature as a sovereign will means that morality is whatever Allah commands, even if it includes deception or contradiction, right? So for Christians and Jews, Satan is the ultimate deceiver and evildoer, but his power is finite. Yet Allah can do greater evil. Allah can do greater deception, greater violence, and Allah is infinite in power. So Allah's ability to deceive and predestine evil as part of his divine will exceeds Satan's scope, making Allah, in a theological sense, capable of far greater evil. So Westerners, we are rooted in Judeo-Christian assumptions, meaning we come from the Old and New Testament biblical theology. We don't understand this. We often struggle to understand this or don't even know it exists. So we assume that God must be good, but Islam's theology does not assume God must be good, which Ibn al-Warraq earlier described very well, very thoroughly. Your thoughts, Ibn al-Warraq?
It will also, by the way, add something completely practical, because you have the idea, you quoted the verse before, there are some people who are created for hell and they are like cattle or even worse.
Yeah.
That will ultimately must create a two-tier legal system where the same action by citizen of a state cannot be treated the same legally.
Yes.
So with a lot of people trying now to, we're going to convert Europe and America to Islam in 50 years. Yeah, good luck with the result, because you must have two distinctive legal systems. Within Christianity and Judaism, you will find the laws written. That's for you. You have these verses repeated quite a lot in the Torah. It's for you and for the sojourner and for the stranger. It's outside the laws of worship. Every law is made is universal. It's for everybody. It's not there as an exception. But in Islam, you will find the law for some, but not for others.
Yeah.
Would create a self-destructive society, essentially.
Well, you have to wonder why the UK is adopting a two-tier policing system, a two-tier justice system that went into effect yesterday on April Fool's Day of all things. We now have a new
No, I
two.
didn't know that. I wasn't following anything happens
Oh,
in
no,
the
no,
UK
just have a
because
look. Because if you are
they're
black
kind of a joke right at the
or
moment.
a minority group, judges have to sentence you less than they would a native white British citizen.
Okay, unless of course I would love it when countries like this, someone would bring them a test case of things where they really can't deal with, like
No,
uh, like an
doesn't.
gory person eating his dead next door neighbor. It's like, what? This is my religion. I eat people.
Yeah, well, Islam, then look, according to the UK law right now, well, if you're a brown person you're from Islam, you're a minority, we've got to sentence you less because you see,
Yeah, except
people
the
have been.
majority of British Muslim, or a lot, not the majority, a lot of British Muslim now are redhead Irish for some reason.
Yeah, let's not talk about. Anyway, let's finish the article because this
Yes,
has actually taken longer than I expected. So,
conclusion.
to limit Allah's power, even to say that Allah cannot do evil, is blasphemy in Islam. To say that Allah can't come down and rape your daughter, to say that, well, we know Allah can't come to earth anyway, because, I don't know, whatever, Allah just can't or doesn't or whatever. But anyway, to say that Allah cannot come down to earth and rape your daughter is evil, it's blasphemy, because Allah can do anything, which is insane. So this questions Allah's sovereignty. Al-Ghazali, the 99 beautiful names of Allah. By the way, there are multiple lists of the 99 names of Allah. In fact, these are 99 adjectives of Allah. They're not names, they are characteristics.
And
These are
one of the
adjectives.
lists is 254 names.
Exactly. And Muhammad has 250 names himself. In fact, technically, if you look at the list of names of Muhammad, it's more than the 99 names of Allah. So Muhammad has even more names. So it's all nuts. Yeah. Now, Yahweh's sovereignty is expressed through his goodness, not against his goodness. So, what do we conclude? Allah and Yahweh are not the same. Yahweh cannot lie or do evil. Because his nature is goodness and truth, as seen in Numbers 23:19 and James 1:17, we know that the nature of God is fixed. He can only do good. He can only do just. He cannot lie. He is truth. Allah can deceive, he can mislead, and to deny this is to blaspheme Allah's sovereignty. To say that Allah cannot deceive or cannot mislead is to sin against Allah. So this makes Allah's nature fundamentally opposed to that of Yahweh. He is capable of actions that, from a Christian and a biblical perspective, align with evil, surpassing even Satan's capacity for evil. And if we want to walk in truth, we have to acknowledge this divide, right? We don't want to condemn people, but we need to speak the truth, and we need to condemn the evil that this philosophy is. And we need to understand that these are irreconcilable differences at the heart of these faiths. Irreconcilable differences. Final comment to you, Ibn al-Warraq.
One last point I would add is in both God and Allah, the relationship with the people, with the creation. In the Bible, God, both in the Old and the New Testament, God's relationship with people is He want them to He wants be to be with Him. He want them to like in the Garden of Eden. He want them to enjoy His presence for eternity. And
Hmm.
the relationship between Allah and the people, and He want them servant and slaves, not in a relationship with Him. Even in heaven, the red light district they have there, they will see Allah once a week, according to some hadith. But
No.
it's not a, it's according to some hadiths. There is a debate about it. But the relationship in eternity is not to be with Him. It's a completely separation between. So one wants to be with you, and other want you as a slave.
Yeah,
Uh,
and so you go and hang out in the best little whorehouse in paradise. Basically, that's the story.
I'm not sure I would because according to Islam, it's a non-alcoholic alcohol or
Oh,
something.
but the rivers are flowing with wine. You can just dip your cup in the river.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Having spending eternity getting drunk is a fun way to go. Not
Yeah,
my
but
cup of
you have a
tea.
memory that never gets soft, and you have little boys with doe eyes and soft skin to serve you.
Again, not my cup of tea.
Yeah, and you've got
No,
the
but the serious point is
yeah
it's adding to the difference between the character, the unknowability of Allah. It's even the relationship that's they both allegedly, Allah the creator, the relationship they have with their creation is one want tools, puppets, and one wants a relationship with the creation, with his people.
yeah, and he wants them
That's
to willingly
completely
accept
different.
him and follow him willingly, not because they're robots.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The difference for me is like between a loving father and a Marquis de Sade.
yeah. Marquis de Sade was actually a horrible, evil individual. I've covered him in the past. The man was just incredibly evil,
That's
and
why
he
I
was
cho-
also
that
into he was
that
also into
that
his brothel behavior.
that's why I chose him. I said the difference between Allah and God is Marquis de Sade and a loving father.
Yeah, and he was into brothel behavior that involved pain and all sorts of fun things. So yeah, I was. I'm thinking I've got this other article to do, but I'm thinking, are you free tomorrow or a different day? Maybe tomorrow. Would that then we can tackle that one because actually then we can give it the thorough treatment. A really thorough discussion as we did today. Um,
Yeah, tomorrow I'm free.
if you're okay, because I'm at the office tomorrow and I will be back. I'm not sure what time I'll finish, so that depends. But maybe the schedule roughly the same time. Schedule the same time. Should be.
Should be, yeah.
Yeah, then
Whatever I have to do, I'll do it in earlier before then. You know, I nearly missed it today because I forgot you sent me the link yesterday, and I was waiting. Where's the link?
yeah, no, I sent it.
Anyway,
Yeah, no. But look, let's see. So, guys, I think I'd rather end here. Rather than go into the second article, because actually I'm going to have to redo the title of today's show. We're streaming on X. We're streaming on Rumble, as well as here on YouTube. I have to change the title so that maybe I'll call it something like the irreconcilable differences in the nature of Allah and God or Yahweh, so that to differentiate it from the previous talk we did. But
or you can like simply you can call it like, no, we don't have the same God. We don't worship the same God. So it's like,
you're right.
yeah.
That's the point. We do not worship the same God. Yeah, I think with your assistance here, I think we have thoroughly debunked that these are not the same gods. Ideologically, philosophically, theologically, historically, characteristically, relationship-wise. There is no metric I think we can use that shows that these are the same characters. They're not even that the same.
And whenever you try to talk with the Muslim apologists about defending Islamic concept of Allah, they will try to tell you like the person who's in Sohail. Oh, the church father said about God. I don't want to tell you about what I believe in. I would like you to tell me about what you believe in and defend your own belief. So they never try to explain their belief because once you try to, it's a house of cards. It's just
Mhm.
once you scratch the surface, it will collapse because it's incoherent. contradictory, utterly nonsensical
Yeah.
belief system.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, it makes no sense. So from the audience, I mean, hopefully, have you learned from this? Have you seen how these are two irreconcilably different deities or concepts of deity? These are two irreconcilably different moral philosophies. These are two irreconcilably different theologies. There is no way that you can square these things. The one is a circle, the one is a square. They're not the same things. The one is wet, the one is dry. The one is a dog, the one is a cat. They're opposite. They're not the same. And these are not like man and woman who are complementary. These are contradictory. These are oppositional. These are things that are evil versus good. I think, would that be a fair assessment, Ibn Warraq?
Uh, Anyone who try to make the argument that's they are the same deity, he is trying to lull you to sleep so you don't argue with them. It's like, oh, we respect Jesus, we believe in the same God, so how about you become one of us? I remember one day I was in Speaker's Corner visiting the UK, so I went to Speaker Corners as you do as a tourist. And there's this Muslim preacher telling this young British lad with his girlfriend, "You're afraid to become a Muslim or take your girlfriend from you? No, 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 no. You can still have your girlfriend." He's telling them to do and something absolutely forbidden in Islam, but as long as you get in, because you did mention it once before, that's for Muslim, for someone converting, it's not a soul saved, it's a person conquered. It's the act of conquering no matter what.
Yeah,
They
he
don't
earned
really,
reward as well from Allah. Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't matter if they lie about the nature of Allah or what we agree about, and as long as they get you in.
yeah,
There is, and I'll end with one story. I think it was the third, fourth century Hijrah. There was a guy who was accused of fabricating hadith, and you told him, "You do know that the Prophet says anybody lies about me will go to hell." He said, "But I
yeah.
didn't lie about him. I lied for him." So, and that was his justification.
That is word games, man. That is word games. That is so
Uh,
good. That is fantastic.
it's the same thing they do it still today. Word games.
I lied for him, but that's just as bad because morally it shows that you can lie and should lie, and in fact, if it benefits the Muslim, it benefits Islam,
Yes,
then lying
because
is fine.
Muhammad himself did it during several times. He lied.
Yeah, and we've covered that. I've discussed this in depth. Sharia has a complete doctrine of lying. It has, in fact, it is, in the Sharia, one of the manuals, you'll find a chapter called obligatory lying, because lying is an obligatory duty for Muslims.
The only
So,
caveat they will do, they will says, if you can, you would use what's called in Arabic tawriya. You would use double meaning.
yeah, yeah,
Like the lie recorded about Muhammad, someone was asking him, "Where are you from?" He says, "We are from water." There is a little place in the Arabian Peninsula called water, Ma' sama, and so he thought they are from this tribe called water. But what Muhammad meant were from water as from Siemens. So he's playing with the word to deceive the person, but lying is the act of giving information that you know is deceptive, regardless of what you're going to call it, white lie or
yeah.
red.
No, it's
So
permitted. It's legal and it is obligatory, which is contrary to the nature of Jesus, contrary to the nature of God, and it goes against the Bible standard of "Thou shalt
it's
not bear
it's
false
one.
witness."
It's impossible for God to lie,
Yeah.
not for Allah.
So yeah, for the audience, hopefully that was something that was educational. You learned something. You can use this. Please use this in your social media. All we can do we're not billionaires like Elon Musk and George Soros. I don't have U.S. aid backing me, unfortunately. Unfortunately, unlike George Soros, who was using a lot of U.S. aid money to actually spread his lies around the world, the best we can do is to tell the truth, know the facts, speak the truth, present these
And
facts, go
yeah,
against the narrative. Yeah.
and if you want to pick a fight with me for something I said wrong, follow me on Twitter and tell me where I got wrong. I got anything wrong,
Yeah,
if I got
yeah,
anything wrong.
yeah. His links
Or
are in
if
the description. So, and you can find me on Twitter as well. Follow me on X as well. And I appreciate all of your support. I really do appreciate the questions, the interaction. We'll do this again next week. I will be out of the country on business. I will not be available. It's very unlikely I can stream. So hence, I'm doing hopefully 3 or 4 streams this week, because next week I will be unable. So yeah, and Lilamain says, thank you, Lloyd, always educational. And yeah, and Ibn al-Warraq, I mean, your knowledge is amazing. I mean, really, the depth of your knowledge, the detail, I mean, really, I think we've really covered this very thoroughly. And there is no comparison between God, between Allah, and between Yahweh. They are contradictories.
Okay, thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Good night. Take care, guys. We shall see you soon. Good night, everyone, and God bless.